Oh,
There we go.
there we are. Goes back. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Welcome to the first in our series for Forage PEI webinars. My name is Kent Thompson, Director of Finance and Food Tourism with Food Island Partnership, and I'm on the Forage PEI committee. The series of webinars kind of came together quite quickly for us. We had a meeting last Tuesday, and I think it was Tyler Glant, and the meeting said, okay, we need these in days, not months. And I said, okay, well, let's do it next Wednesday. And then spoke to Bill on Friday. He said, well, why don't we just do it Saturday? I'm ready to go. So kind of shows the food industry is ready and willing and wanting some information and kind of being able to talk. And I think that, kind of bear with us today because it is our first time putting on these webinars. And they're meant kind of similar to Forage, is bringing a community together to share and to talk. There's nothing today that you could, say is advice specific to your business. Consider what's said from any of us as lessons we've learned and things that we know from working in the industry, but consider your own business when you're making any decisions and make sure that it may or may not work for you. So to the right, if you have questions, there's a little questions panel. I'll be kind of moderating and behind the scenes and sending those questions to Tracy. So if you see her looking down, she's looking at the questions I'm sending along to her. And then, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tracy Singleton. So Tracy is the president and owner of Versatile Management Group. I've been lucky enough to get to work with Tracy for probably the last 10 years on a number of projects, but the main one is with Fall Flavors, and it's her team that really makes Fall Flavors a success and led us to winning a TIAC award for Best Culinary Festival in Canada last year. So I'll hand it over to Tracy.
Hi, thank you very much, Kent. So excited to be here with everybody today. We're going to talk a little bit today about pivoting our businesses, and as Kent said, this is a great way for Forage to pivot as well. I'm the co-chair of the Forage Prince Edward Island Committee in tandem with Jeff McCourt, who I believe is with us today. I'm so excited to be here with Bill Pratt. I've heard this gentleman's name so many times over the years, so to have him here today with us as our very first speaker as part of the webinar series is quite exciting for me. I had the opportunity to speak with Bill yesterday, and I think his 40 years of experience in the industry is going to give us lots of great insight as to how we can adapt, how we can pivot, and perhaps what the next 3, 6, 12 and even 18 months is going to look like for all of us in the food and the restaurant industry. Bill owns, I believe it's 19 restaurants. He's got 7 food trucks. He's also involved with a brewery. He has operations here in Charlottetown as well. So the perspectives that he's going to bring, I think will be quite insightful. He's cautioned me to tell me he plays devil's advocate, and he's going to give us the real truth. He's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to tell us like it is, and I think that's really what we're all looking for right now, is to kind of get the cold hard truth so we know how to adapt and to adjust our businesses. Hi, Bill.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. So I'm going to jump right in. We also have a poll going right now. We're trying to get a perspective on what our audience looks like. So with us last count today, we had 77 participants joining us. So I think that's pretty amazing. When Kent reached out to me Monday and said we had a webinar for Wednesday, not going to lie, I was a little concerned about how many people we'd have show up on such short notice, but I think it just speaks to the importance of this particular topic, because we're all wondering and looking, for that insight and trying to adapt our businesses. So right now, we'll share with you a little bit later on as to who we have with us. But we have quite a cross section, predominantly from the chef, the restaurant owner category right now. But we've also got representatives joining us from the farmer fisher community. We've got some government representatives, as commodity boards, and a very small minority coming in from the accommodation sector. So I think everybody's really intrigued to hear what's going to happen over the next little while. So I'm going to jump right in, Bill, with my very first question. Obviously, you've been adapting and you've been pivoting quite a bit over the last 3 months, or I guess 10 weeks, I guess it would predominantly be. Can you give us some perspective on what your business looks like now, how you've pivoted, and what perhaps is going on in your operations?
Before we start, I did want to mention, that I'm a chef restaurateur and not a lawyer. And, my comments today really are my opinion, right? And based on my 42 years in the industry. So I don't want to have people leading away from this here and say that, well, Bill Pratt said I got to do this. I just want to cover all bases on that. The last 10 weeks have been very tumultuous, to say the least. Starting at the beginning when this happened, I immediately had to lock down my facilities and let my staff go and protect cash flow. That's the first thing I recognized, that I had to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't come out of it, because I knew it was going to go on for a long period of time. So I was in the defensive probably for the first week, just trying to plug holes and protect the cash flow that I had, because we had people that companies that automatic payments coming out of that. We had to pull all that stuff out, because I knew I needed to have it when we start coming out of this. After the first week and meeting with my team, even though I'd laid them off, we have a lot of dedicated people, but we came up, came up with a plan basically to take a strategic pause for at least 2 to 3 weeks, so that when we were able to get back into it, we knew the person on the right and the person on the left were also taking safety precautions for themselves, and isolation, all that stuff would not make us sick either. Then during that period, I started to go on the offensive and make plans to reopen, because I knew when we reopened that we needed to have safety precautions for our staff, which was important. Then we started to reopen 1-2 stores at a time. The challenge we found was finding staff to come back, because they were still fearful of getting sick. And we didn't want to pressure anybody. We don't want to cause any undue stress, because there's a lot of anxiety right now. Even today, 10, we're under 11th week, and still people are cautious and don't want to come back to work yet. So that, to reopen, if we didn't have the staff, and I was dividing to open the first 2 locations, I needed to first is to reduce my menu. I needed to, because we didn't have the staff to operate like we normally did. So we reduced that. And the only restaurants, because I have a combination of sit-down restaurants, I have, oops, sorry, there's my phone. Sorry, I have sit-down restaurants, I have quick service restaurants, I have food trucks, right? I partnered with the boys from Upstreet, Mitch and Mike, for my barbecue restaurant. So each one is different, and we were not allowed by law basically to have people come in and sit down in our restaurants. It was takeaway only. So we strategized ourselves, during those weeks that we were closed, right, to come up with a plan, so when we could reopen, we were ready to go. We needed to get back in the game, right?
And how have you been able to, we talked a lot the other day about generating revenue, and certainly, how are restaurants profitable during this downtime, and how do we generate revenue during this particular time? Can you speak a little bit about that in terms of profitability, and how do we get cash coming into the business so that we are around for the long term?
When this first happened, I encouraged a few chef friends of mine that they needed to close. This was going to go on for a long period of time. I was speaking with a friend in Italy who was going through it at the time. I'm reading as much as I can to be in tune, and I needed to close. I needed to make it safe. But then I knew at some point I needed to restart that. And the government allowed quick service restaurants to do takeaway. Okay, anybody could do takeaway. A lot of people have street side drop off or pickups, stuff like that, but weren't planning or working on a plan to get back in the game to start generating some revenue. Okay, then it's inevitable you're going to sink. So I was speaking and working with a lot of my friends and encouraged them. Okay, this is not going to be over in 2 or 3 months. You've got to get back into the game. And right now, with the wage subsidies that are out there, they were set up to go for 12 weeks, right, in 3 months blocks, which was due, I think, to end on the 6th of June. And it was written in a way by the lawyers so that it could be expanded to another 12 weeks, okay? And I was taking a gamble. Do I use that up now, okay, that 12 weeks, and I don't qualify for the next block, whatever that's going to be, even though the Prime Minister said it's going to be expanded. So that gamble paid off for me. He hasn't come out and said it's another 12 weeks. He just said it's going to expand. There's still the devil in the details and filling it out, and it's complicated. You need to read it and make sure that you're able to do that. If you're an owner, there's different restrictions, arm's length and stuff like that. You really need to understand that. Work with your CFO or your bookkeeper or someone who's experienced in that stuff that can help you with that. But I wanted to capitalize on the opportunity. So when I did reopen, and I had minimal staff to do it, but that staff now coming back and getting a 75% wage subsidy, I was running a 6 to 8% labor cost. But when I protected cash flow, I also wouldn't pay rent. I chose not to pay rent. I chose to work with my landlords. So now if you took off the rent cost and only run with the 25% labor cost, my profitability sprung from 11 points to 52 points. So it was huge market, and there wasn't a lot of people, back in the game yet. And I'm encouraging, friends locally here, friends in Ontario, chef friends, and saying the sooner you realize that you need to get back in the game, okay, as quickly as possible and start building a clientele. But you can't get back in the game doing it the way you always done it in the past, because we're in a different era right now. We're now in a takeaway era, and that's going to go on for months and could go on for years. So we need to pivot dramatically into our old style of service into a new concept.
So let's talk a little bit about rent relief. How do you recommend that owners deal with their landlords? How do they negotiate with their landlords during this time? How have you approached that?
So what first came out was the rent deferral, which I was a huge advocate against that, because that didn't help me. All it did is it added debt that needs to be paid back in months, whether it was paid back in I don't know, 3-month block or 12-month block or the length of your lease, it still had to be paid back. And I pushed back saying, no, that's not going to work, even though the Nova Scotia government guaranteed landlords, if they signed up for this program, they were going to get $5,000 a month, up to $15,000 if the person failed and stuff like that. And I still push back on that, saying the government has to do something else. They have to offer us something else. And I was prepared to wait it out. But during the state of emergency, they can't lock me out anyway. So I was still operating. I have still been operating in 7 facilities, but not paying rent in those facilities. So rent deferral to me was a ball and chain around my neck, and I just carried on anyway. I'm a gambler. I've got to do this here, and I've got to get back in the game. And I didn't want more debt put on me, right? I wouldn't be able to come out of it. So my push has been to work with my landlords, and I reached out to my landlords when this all started, and I said, I want to work with you. I want to come up with a plan. And of course, you've got some landlords that they're sympathetic, they want to work with you, and you have other landlords that are demanding 100% payment. They will not even go with the CECRA, which is the rent relief that the Prime Minister has pushed up on it. So now I'm back in that quagmire again of, do I wait? Do I sit back? Do I just continue to operate and hope or push back to the government, right, that they're going to have to force the landlords to accept this haircut? Because in my conversations with some of my landlords, because I've said to some of them, let's do profit sharing. I'm going to show you what my sales are. Let's take a percentage of that. I'm trying to find angles or ways, okay, to encourage them to work with me. In one of those conversations, and I'm not going to mention the name of the company, it is a big real estate company, okay? And the manager and I spoke, and he said to me, this business has gone down already, that one's already gone down. All these businesses around me were going down. And he said, we are obligated, we've got to give you that letter. And it comes across as harsh, it's demanding. They're trying to intimidate you. They're trying to force you to pay them something so that they can make some payments to the bank. And I said, that's great, but I'm not going to make it. I can't pay 100% of this rent at that time. And I'd written a few, rebuttal letters back to them. But essentially what he said to me then, he said, Bill, the reality is we have to put those letters out, but we're not going to lock your doors. But we can't close you down. In normal circumstances, they would take out 1 or 2 guys. But this is thousands of us. This is all of us that this is happening to. And I think if we collectively come together and refuse to pay that rent, okay, or work with your landlord instead and come up and pay him something, right, is better than nothing. At least he's getting paid. Because you got to understand that the landlords are in the same position as we are, and this isn't a fight against the landlords by no means. We need to work with our landlords, but they're fearful if they lose all of us, they'll end up with thousands of vacant spots. So I don't go in there with a hammer saying you have to do this to me. I'm in there saying, hey, I want to work with you, and I agree. I'll pay the 25% rent subsidy, even though I have no income coming in some of those. I'm going to scrape it together. I protected cash flow. I have the money to do that because I knew the government was going to do it, and that builds a better relationship rather than fighting against your landlords. Okay, I have had one landlord, I will mention him by name, Abe Saloom. Okay, he owns Tony's on Roby Street, and he's my landlord of Studio East, my son's restaurant. And he said to me, basically that he'll only get 75% of the rent, and I have to pay 25%. He doesn't agree with that. He wants me to pay 100%. He doesn't agree with giving up 25% of the rent. He's going to fight back on that. And I said, well, I can't afford to have zero income coming in from this one here. The ones that I have open are supporting my facilities. I can't afford to do that. So he served me with a notice of default papers, right, from his lawyer that I had to pay within 10 days. He's going to take legal action against me. Well, you're going to get landlords like that. They're not all going to want to agree to this CECRA, okay? And this is why we need the government to step in. We need the government to force them, whether it's a provincial government or the federal government. We're in unprecedented times right now, and we've never seen anything like this here. Our parents have never gone through anything like this here. So we need to think differently, and we need to be a little more radical. We're Canadians, and we're nice. And I get that. Now, 18 months ago, I was in Paris. I was leaving Paris on my way to Luxembourg to watch my sons compete. And the day that the riots started in Paris, and they started to burn the Champs-Élysées over the price of gas going up by a few cents. Okay, the public didn't want to do it. Now, we're nice Canadians. Now, we're losing our businesses. People are going bankrupt. People are closing their doors, and we still haven't put together anything to start a fight back against the government and to force them to do something radical. Up to this point, the government has simply been, offering band-aid solutions, patching the holes for the here and the now. And as a restaurateur that's looking in 12 months away or in 18 months away and still going to be in the same predicament, I need them to come up with a think tank. I need them to come up with some team and invite some restaurateurs, some retailers, because it's not just restaurateurs, it's everybody. Invite them to this think tank, okay, and come up with solutions or suggestions that the government needs to take seriously, right, in order to help us come out of this. Because right now, it's just the here and the now, and that ain't helping me in 6 months, in 12 months, in 18 months, because the government's already said it's 12 to 18 months before there might be a cure, which means we're going to be living in this state for a long period of time. That's a long-winded answer. Sorry.
That's perfect. So that leads me to, we're in a period of stimulus right now. Every day we're getting new stimulus packages. How are we going? I mean, those aren't going to be around forever. So what does the next period look like after the stimulus is starting to go away? How are we going to survive and make our way through this particular period?
This is why I've encouraged a lot of my chef friends to get back into the game now while you have that rent subsidy, while you have that wage subsidy available to you now. Start pivoting, start changing your model, okay? Come up with a different solution, dip your toe back in that water and build a clientele now. So when it all goes away, you're already gonna have your system set up. If people wait and wait and wait, and then they try and start to get back in the game, they've lost all that clientele, that opportunity to build your own reputation, to start doing something else. We need to change our mindset. You look at, my restaurant in PEI, Terra Rosa, I took that over last year, flipped it into a nice Italian wine bar, restaurant, everything. Now I've had to look at that and go, with 50% less seats, and it's going to be less than that because of the spacing distance of 2 meters. I'm not going to be able to operate in there as a normal restaurant. So why even go down that road? Instead, I've hired another chef. I'm going to name his name, Dave Marichal. If you're right there, hello. To come in, and we're going to do the first grocerant, market style restaurant in PEI. I don't know of any other ones, but grocerants have been growing in Ontario, in the US, where you're selling groceries. You can get meals to eat in, or you can take them home. You can have a drink in there. So you can come in, and in one of those empty seats, you can grab a meal at the counter and go sit down, or you can take it to go. We want to do take and bakes. We want to do, higher end meals. We want to do higher end takeaway meals. So we're exploring a whole bunch of different things. Dave and I were going over that last night. He sent me a list. We reviewed it. We kicked it back and forth. The advantage as a businessman is that I'm a chef and I can noodle it, but it's his job. He's got to be able to figure it out for me there. But the look and the inside is going to be completely different. We want to have groceries in there and support local cheese makers like Jeff McCourt, farmers that want to have a place to put the produce, because right now everybody's going to the grocery stores and they need other places to be able to get this from. In Nova Scotia, they allow you to do alcohol now with your takeaway sales. So I'm now licensing 4 of my establishments before that were not licensed. One, I went to the landlord and said, okay, in my original lease, you didn't allow me to have alcohol in this, but now I need it. Now that the government has freed that up, are you going to allow me? They said yes. Okay, they've allowed me to do that. I went back to them just last week and said to them, with the amount of seats that's in that location, okay, I'm gonna probably go from 60 seats down to 16 in this location because I still need the 6-foot distance. I said, so let me put a great big patio out front of the restaurant and I'll license it. But I'm gonna have, if it's 100 feet wide by 20 feet deep, I could probably still have 60 people on that patio and have enough room for them. So I did a conceptual drawing, pitched that, sent that into them. So their lawyers are looking at it. So there's no conflict in that area and everything as well. But before I wasn't even allowed a patio. Now I'm asking for a triple, quadruple size patio, because inside your restaurant, you got to remember that as well. 50% is not going to be 50% if you've got a small location. It's going to be a lot less than that. Get your measuring tape out and start figuring it out right now what it is. And then, put your thinking cap on and come up with other solutions that you're going to have to try and operate in there.
So it seems like what you're talking about is people really need to adjust their brand. So, if they're used to being like a full service restaurant, higher end, like they really need to look at even changing what their brand represents in this period.
Yeah, sit-down restaurants are going to take it the hardest. There's a study come out today from the US, and it said 46% of diner customers are afraid to come back to the restaurants, or will be afraid to come back. That's in the US where they're a little more liberal. I suspect in Canada it could be worse. We're a lot more cautious up here. But I think, right now we need to change your concept. The sooner you realize that this is not going to go away in 3 months or 4 months, you need to start pivoting. You need to start coming up with a completely new concept that is going to appeal to your local clientele. You're not going to have a tourist season this year, so start doing something that appeals to your locals, that gets your locals out and coming to visit you or to spend money locally in your restaurant. But to me, I want to do as much local and high quality. So if you take that restaurant style food, right, and offer it to them, that they can take it at home and they can, have this, restaurant style food at home, right? That's the new norm, is what it is. But so we need to rally and bring that up, which means less labor for us to produce that food, right? But you do need storage capacity. You got take-out containers. There's just a bunch more logistics. This is the time now that you should be working on that. I know the PEI government's going to open probably in the next month, or so. I think the 12th of June might be a target. I'm not sure, but I think if you're waiting till the 12th of June and then doing it, you're way behind the eight ball. Like, there's a bunch of people already operating and getting ready to do that. And you just got to go on the website and look at some of it. There's some pretty cool, innovative ideas. And us as chefs, of course, we always share, not steal, recipes from others and see what they're doing, your concepts. So spin whatever is going to work within your model, so that you are profitable. But the push now, as I keep saying, the push is get back in the game now and use up some of that wage and rent subsidy so that when it is or has gone away, because the reality is the government can't save everybody. People will die. Restaurants will close. That's the reality that we're all faced with right now. We're all in this together, right? And that's really the thing that we need to work together as part of this.
Thanks, Bill. So it sounds like now you're calling for action right now. Get back to work and start coming up with the plan. So we're at
Yes.
about the halfway mark. If people have any questions, we have a couple more questions for Bill to get us through to about 3:45. But if people have questions now, if they want to submit those, we're more than happy to start to filter those through as well. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. We've been talking a little bit about stimulus and the different programs that are out there, but I guess now we're trying to get people back to work, and some of them have been on the CERB. They haven't been working for a while. What are our rights, as business owners, to get these people back to work, and how do we approach that sensitive matter?
Again, I'm not a lawyer, okay? And I want to be very cautious of that right now. And I've read a lot like everybody else. I did get a legal opinion from Stuart McKelvey that I did share with some of my staff as well, because I would open more stores if I had the staff to do it. And I've encouraged them to come back. And they have to realize that you have to protect your own business, okay? And if staff don't come back, okay, we need to make sure that you're protecting your business assets, because if you can't get open, you're going to sink. That's the reality right now, is you're going to sink as part of that stuff. So I'm trying to say to my staff and educate them and tell them, if you refuse that job, and it's your right, and please don't feel pressured to come back to work if you're nervous, you don't want to get sick. I'm not going to pressure you. But what I'm telling you right now is, if you don't come back to work legally, okay, it's a resignation is what that is. And I would encourage you to try and get in writing, email or a text or something saying, no, I'm not comfortable, I don't want to come back to work right now, which now gives me the right, okay, to hire behind, because I got to protect my business. If I don't do that, then my business is going to sink and they're not going to have a job to come back to anyway. The reality for me is, as I close some of these, because I've targeted 2, 3 of them right now that are going to close, okay, and I've told all my staff there won't be positions for everybody to come back to. So the people that come back now will have an opportunity to, get one of those positions that are left over. So all of a sudden, after I sent that out this week, now all of a sudden I have a few more people that, oh, I do want to come back. Oh, I feel a little bit better. I'm interested in coming back out to it. But that's just what I was faced with, 4 or 5 weeks ago. It was a shutdown. No, it was too easy for people to say, no, I like this, staying at home right now in our industry, which is really supports a lot of people just above minimum wage or on minimum wage. I'm being cautious here, okay, and they're more comfortable to stay at home and collect this CERB, okay, and take the 4-month break rather than come back, okay. But I can't wait for that. I need to protect my business is what I need to do, and I want to make sure, okay, that I'm hiring people, okay, that are able to support me in the here and now, and we've been able to do that. The challenge now is that it's not busy enough QSR takeaway pre-COVID represented 10% of my business. So even if it doubled or if it tripled or if it quadrupled, okay, it's still not enough, okay, to support me. So I need to shrink my staff. I need to shrink my workload. I've changed my menus. I've pivoted pretty hard over because I have other concepts. I've taken, for example, my cheese curds brand, and I put in there fish and chips in it.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
I have a You Pick Fish, one of my other restaurant concepts. Oh, I've been selling more fish than I have burgers, and burgers were already busy, which is
Yeah.
a good problem. I've put my poke sushi bowl, ponzu, okay, in with my habaneros in some locations. In some locations, I've got cheese curds, I've got habaneros, I got You Pick Fish, and I got ponzu. I got all four because they appeal to takeaway. So I'm growing, that initial 10%, 15% up to 50, 60, 70% with less staff. Okay, but I don't have the full menu or the same way until we get back to some sort of normalcy, right? So this is how we need to make changes, and the staff need to be aware, which I've sent out regular communications to all of them, that there may not be a job for them to come back to. That has helped bring some back. But
So it sounds like what you're saying is there's the incentive that they may not come back to work if they don't choose to come back now. But are you also working with people on the CERB? Because some of them can make up to $1,000 now. So are you working with them so that you're keeping their labor kind of within that level so they can continue to collect that as well?
yeah, that was a great initiative by the government to allow that to happen. Initially, it was $2,000, and that was either you're in CERB or you're out of CERB, and that wasn't very fair. It's no different. The government has had to change their mind. They've been forced to change their mind when they initially came out with this 10% wage subsidy. Okay, so if my payroll is $100,000 every 2 weeks, and I got to pay out $90,000 with no income, okay, and only get $10,000 back from the government. That was a no-brainer. Nobody took them up on that. It forced them to change that to a different idea of 75%. Well, that makes more sense to me, right? And then I took advantage of that in order to open some more of my stores and then open more of my stores. But I need to grow the takeaway to have that balance. So until we're COVID is well behind us, I'm going to have to operate with a lot less staff, right? So that's the other challenge right now is I won't be able to bring those people back even if I can, right? And as much as I want to, they have to realize that there is no job. And that, again, this is what helped me by telling them that stuff, communicating with your people in a respectful way. That's it. They have to realize that we can't bring everybody back if we're going to fail in some of my locations, right? So I will protect the ones that did come back and put themselves at risk like everybody else.
Excellent. So we've got a question here from one of our participants, and I guess we're talking about a digital first now, using social media to communicate. How important do you feel that social media is going to be in relation to communicating with our customers, communicating how our service delivery has changed? How important do you feel that social media is as we navigate through the next period?
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to throw somebody under the bus
On
here.
Facebook.
Okay. And the power of social media, when I opened, my first restaurants, even though I'm an old guy and I don't believe in Facebook and all those things, I'm smart enough to know that I need it. And from the get-go, that exploded my business is what it did. Okay, so now flash forward into COVID, and all of a sudden we go from 10% of takeaway now and trying to drive that up. And I have the delivery companies like the Ubers and the Skip the Dishes and DoorDashers. I'm probably going to get in trouble for that. Who now got overwhelmed with all this stuff. And we had dipped our toe, and we had some of those in there because as even though they take their 25 to 30% margins, what I saw in some of my stores pre-COVID is that I still had to pay the rent. I still had to pay the labor. I still had to pay the power and the lights. But if I could get, another $1,000 a week or $2,000 a week on top of that, and there was no added cost, well, I was giving up the 25 or 30%. Now, so since this has happened, Uber's out there saying, oh, we're going to give free delivery. Great for the customers. Okay. We're still getting boinked on the back end, with 25 or 29% that we still have to pay. The challenge was that they got overwhelmed with that, and people now, so we had a whole bunch of Uber orders sitting on the counter waiting to be picked up, and they had no drivers to come and pick them up, and the customers are getting mad at us, and they're calling us, and we're going, we have your food, it's Uber, you got to complain to them. But that, when I got Uber on the phone and said, you're tarnishing my reputation by this, after an hour you cancel the order, someone's been waiting for their dinner for the last hour. So what we did, we used the power of social media, and I pushed that out there and put a big sign saying, your food is ready, it's here, but Uber's dropping the ball. So why don't you just come to our site, which was our online site, and it was linked with Chow Now. So Chow Now only has a $217 a month fee, right, for as many orders as I want. It links to my online ordering. I encourage people to come to my restaurant and be, creative with my marketing and offer them 10% off. Well, if they come and pick it up and get 10% off, I'm still saving 20% because it's not going back to Uber, right? And they got a deal out of this here, which I could live with. Now, if they did a dinner for 4, I offer them 15% off, so they could feed the whole family for that. And now I got fish and chips and burgers and poutine, so, or habanero, so they could, everybody in the family of 4 could have something different. They just got to get out of the house, drive down, pick it up, and away they go. And that worked tremendous for us. We noticed a dip, probably for a day, but by putting it out in social media, holy cow, it recovered very quickly in Chow Now.
So are you still working with the Ubers and the Skip the Dishes, or are you predominantly doing Chow Now, or how important are those companies as we move forward? Do we need to be working with them? Can we survive without them? What do we do?
I'll be honest, it's difficult to survive without them. That's in some of my locations. Downtown, right, they have, the drivers are in the downtown areas, but the further you go out, okay, the less opportunity. The driver isn't going to drive from downtown to go all the way out to Woodside to make a delivery, right, and then have to drive all the way back downtown. That's what we had the problem at nighttime. So we shut it off at nighttime. We'll have it during the day, but if you're in a big populated area, then yeah, Uber's probably going to be good for you, or DoorDash or Skip the Dishes, or all of them are trying to work their way into that, right? But they have to realize when you're tipping in the Uber, it's not going to the restaurant, it's going to the Uber company or the drivers or whatever that is. Okay, so it's not tipping us. But in Chow Now, now you tip that to us, and our staff are the ones that are like, hey, look, this is fantastic because their sales have gone up, right?
Awesome, thank you. So another question that we have here, I feel like I know who it might be, but how are your restaurants adjusting to dealing with local suppliers, with farmers? How are you adjusting those relationships? How are you dealing with are you making any changes there?
We haven't started in PEI yet, but the direction I gave to Dave Mattershaw, my new chef, is to reach out to the local farmers as much as possible. I want to support those guys. I reached out to Chef Michael Smith at the Inn of Bay Fortune. I said, hey, you got this great big organic farm out there. Why don't we broker a deal and we'll put him in my new grocerant, right? And we'll have in-style vegetables. Of course, he's got to grow that, and he's got to grow enough of it to support us. But we could be doing have a section. What I said to Dave is, let's have a section in there and let's promote that farmer that's in and help him as well, to push his product out, right? But I want to, of course, work with my friends first, my producers, and I still have relationships with some of the large suppliers who have also struggled, the GFSs and the other guys out there, okay, the local food suppliers, and they've also struggled. They were stuck, you realize, with millions of dollars of product. When all this happened, boom, all at once, they lost millions and millions of dollars. They could give away some of it. Like I had my reps calling me going, do you know any restaurants open that could take some of this food? And I'm like, we're all shut down. That first few weeks just killed them, and you just can't keep that. I have reached out to my potato farmer in PEI, Rollo Bay, and said to him, you know, I'm going to try and do as much as possible, okay, and open as many stores. We're not going to have the volume that we have. What we tried to do, and I think what we all need to remember is throughout all of this, right, we need to remember to give back to our local communities as much as possible. We need to do that, you know, one thing a week, or you know, something to support our frontline workers. And what I did from the get-go of this one here is I reached out to the city in Halifax and said, I've got this huge production kitchen. It's not doing anything right now. If you got any emergency feeding, any emergency relief, reach out to me. I'm going to get volunteers. We're going to do something for you. Then what I did is I reached out to my local hospital, Dartmouth General Hospital, and said, I want to work with you guys. And you've got a lot of frontline workers out there. And what I want to do every week is go out to a different hospital, okay, and give away free poutine. And I don't want, you're a doctor, I get it, you're not going to advocate for salty poutine, and it's not healthy, okay, but it's a morale thing, right? And we went out to the Dartmouth General, and they said, yeah, we should have 300 staff that are coming out. Can you do that? And I said, yeah, we're a food truck, we can bang that out, no worries. We did 433. So
wow.
The surgeons were in there. I'm sure everybody was in there, but it was a morale thing for those, and we had a lot of fun with that. Well, then we carried on. We went to Musquodoboit Harbor. We went to Sheet Harbor. Tomorrow we're going to Hants County Hospital in Windsor. Then we're going to the Cobequid Sackville Hospital. I want to be able to every week take my food truck and just, you know, give back to Nova Scotians. You know, we've been under a lot of stress. We've gone through, you know, some horrific periods over the past few weeks, and I want to go back to them. And I've said to, you know, my chef that's working beside me, we're going to be safe. We're going to be inside that truck, but I want to go to the Northwood Manor, where in Nova Scotia, of the 48 deaths, 42 of them have happened there. Right? I want that staff members, you know, that are really a front line. I want to be able to give back to them and be proud of doing something, whatever we can as part of that.
And you know those people are going to support you, obviously, when they're looking to go somewhere too, right? If you're supporting them, it's kind of a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah, but that's given back to your community, regardless of that, you know, and that's nice that they would consider that, but that's not the primary thing of doing this. Me, you know, like I said, to reach out to the city and say, hey, I got this production kitchen. I can feed thousands of meals out of there. I've got blast chillers and ovens, and you know, and it's doing nothing. So please reach out to me. Twice I've gone back to them, and you know, they're kind of, you know, thanks. If we get to that point, we'll use you. So regardless, I wasn't sitting back. I wanted to do something else as well to get back into that and to support my community. So
yeah, it's very important. We have another question from the participants. We have a seasonal business operator who is going to be shifting to takeout, and this shift is going to require some investment, obviously, for them to be able to make that shift. They're wondering what your thoughts are on making investments at this time to grow your business.
So every time I'm doing something new nowadays, okay, I'm thinking, how can I do it without spending money? Like, that's the new Bill Pratt. Okay, how can I do this? How can I spin this in a way, okay, that I can leverage, that I don't gotta have a lot of output, because I'm still protecting cash flow. Okay, and I would encourage those people to do the same if you don't have to spend it, because you don't know if that's going to work. And so to put all that money out, okay, I'd say, you know, dip your toe in the water and start doing some in that plan without having to spend a lot of money. And if you start generating that money, then reinvest that back into it, because then now you know you've got a market. Right now it's a shot in the dark, right? And I'm very cautious before I go out and do something like that. I'm going to open, as I suggested earlier, that I want to put this big patio once I get approval out front. Well, I'm going to do it with 2x4s and you know, cement blocks and just a fence that in. I'm not going to spend any fancy money. I'm going to use my existing patio furniture. It doesn't got to look good. It needs to be functional is what it needs to be. So I would encourage them to be very cautious about outputting too much money right now. Okay.
And I think the government here has some money to help with businesses that are doing adaptations to their business, like plexiglass and things like that. So I think there's also some mechanisms for people to get the support that they need as well.
Yeah, that's critical right now, is to use all the resources you can. From every province is different. Every province has different allowances and stuff like that. And some of them you can compound them, like you can, I have multiple facilities. In Nova Scotia, we were allowed $5,000 per facility. Well, I applied, you know, for 5 or 6 or 7 of them. My CFO did that because we're allowed to do that, and it's because each one is different. So I would encourage you to read the devil in the details on all the programs and apply for it. Now is the time, you know, you're sinking. Now's the time to grab as much as you can. Okay.
Take advantage.
Yeah, legally.
So we're coming on to the last 10 minutes. So if people have any further questions, please feel free to send them in. My last question that I have is kind of like, if you were to look in your crystal ball, Bill, and tell us maybe what you think the next 3 months look like, maybe the next 12 to 18 months of sort of the short term versus the tail end of this particular of COVID. What do you think that short term and a little bit longer term might look like if you were to a betting person?
I think because there is still too much unknown right now. Okay, the Nova Scotia government still hasn't got a projection when restaurants can open. But we're coming into our summer tour season, and people are going to want to be outside. They're going to want to be out and about. So I would encourage again for people to get back in that game now and start testing the waters on some of your new programs, so that by the fall, when things start to slow down, or in the winter time, at least you've got a program that's up and running, okay, and people are used to. You've built a clientele, but you need to constantly be able to change and update. If something isn't working, don't fall on the sword, pivot, do something else, right? I've done that multiple times in some of my locations. If it wasn't working, okay, just because I made the decision doesn't mean we have to sink the ship because of that. What I do is I pivot and go off on something else and try a different move on something like that there. But getting customers on your side, I was pretty shocked when we first started this at how many people were thanking us for reopening, right? To, you know, give them food. And nothing against home cooked meals, I get that, but they're tired and we like variety and everything. So to open, we got slammed. I'm telling you, we got hammered from the get-go. We had to recoup for the next week. We got hammered again, right? And we've been adapting ever since that, right? Trying to make it work.
And finally, I think in terms of communities, what communities are doing to help support the restaurant sector. I guess we're hearing about more public spaces being opened up so that people can go and do picnics with takeouts, perhaps programming some of those spaces with music. We're talking about increased patio space. Any thoughts on that? We've also heard a little bit about the restaurant sector working together so that everybody's not closed on the exact same day of the week, so that, you know, the consumers have choice and always have something available. Can you kind of speak to what we can be doing collectively? We've talked a lot about adapting our own business, but what do we do collectively as a group to get through this period and to make sure that as many of us, you know, that we survive and we thrive as a result of that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. It seems like there's all this doom and gloom, and we're talking about that. It's going to take forever, and our businesses are going to sink, and all that stuff. And it's not all doom and gloom for those forward thinker entrepreneurs. Okay, we will get through this. It's just going to take a long period of time. And what you need to do, and what I encourage people to do right now, is do what you got to do. Okay, to get through this period. Okay, you're going to have to swallow your pride a little bit. You're going to have to do different things that you can generate revenue. Okay, a good example with my supplier who said, hey, we want to do a truckload sale. right? We want to use your brand because you got a lot of followers. So people can buy discounted meat by the caseload, right? And we'll have a pickup. They'll do a lot of that stuff. We get a percentage of it. So now we're using my name, okay, my brand to be able to sell restaurant bulk food. So you've got to do what you got to do to get through this. If you're stuck on your pride, then you're going to sink. So what you need to be doing is being creative. And we got so many creative chefs in Canada that can create wonderful food and do all this crazy stuff. Now, put that in your business hat on, okay, and say, okay, how can I make a profit out of that, but still serving some of that good food that's not plated on that fancy plate and it's coming in a tinfoil dish? How can you make it look that cool? Or how can you pivot to do something completely different or that separates you from the other guy? We're still in a competitive market. We're salespeople as chefs. People still got to come to your restaurants, but you got to have good food so that they come back to you. They go, wow, that was awesome. I'm going to order that again next week. That's why I encouraged when we started here in Nova Scotia, the food truck rallies, and we had some truckers wanted to do their full menu. And I said, no, just do one or two things and do a lot of it and do it fast and push people through, do quality stuff. They did theirs, I did mine. I did quadruple the amount of people they did. They did 200. They thought that was great. I did 800, right? So do what you got to do, I think, right now, without having to completely sell your soul, but to generate revenue, to get through this bump in the road so you can come out on the other end of all this here stuff. We've got a lot of chefs, sit-down restaurants who've never done takeaway. They can't do that, but my few chef friends, Dave Lamers in Ontario, Justin Wolf, I'm working with those guys saying, hey, get back in the game and do what you got to do. As I said earlier, we're nice Canadians, and I think we need to be pissed off Canadians right now, okay, and be pushing back at our government and forcing them to do things. And we need the voice, like a collective voice of Restaurants Canada as example. They're the leader, they're the spokesperson for us right now. We need to push those directors and push those people to stand up for us. We should have the CEO of Restaurants Canada's quote on the front page of the Toronto Star or the Globe and Mail. CEO of Restaurants Canada calls out Prime Minister Trudeau, for Restaurants Association, right? And pushes back, does something. It's okay right now to get down and dirty, otherwise we're going to sink. There's no way around that. And I'm vocal in that part of it, and I'm okay to be the sacrificial lamb. Like I said, I'm okay to stand up there, and I've had threats from some landlords saying, if you disclose the contents of this letter, we're going to make it null and void. And it was a deferral letter, and I'm going, okay, good. I fired that out to about 100 people, right? I don't care. I'm going to sink that business anyway, right? In order to save the core business. And I'm no different. I could be bankrupt like everybody else as part of this if we can't come out of this right now. And right now, I'm just trying to wiggle my way through, do what I can, putting 4 restaurant concepts into 1 restaurant concept. And I'm going to my landlord and saying, if you don't let me do this, I'm definitely going to sink. Let me do something to generate revenue. So that's why I say landlords are not the enemy. We need to work with them, okay, and come up with something that works for both of you, right? Because even with 50% less seats, and you still got to pay 100% rent, something's going to give there. You can cut back on staff, and you can cut back on food, but if you got that rent looming over your head like it normally was before, we're going to sink. And that's what I pushed back to my landlords and said, I can't do it. I'm just going to have to let it go.
Thanks. I have one final question from our participants, and then I think we're going to wrap up, but I'm not sure where this one will go. But any advice for us folks in the event or people in the catering business, how to pivot, what to do at this particular time? It's still very early on, obviously, for a lot of the event sector, but caterers, any suggestions of how to pivot or some adaptations perhaps that you've seen?
I think what you need to do, okay, is you need to brainstorm, okay, and not give up. Even though there's some surveys out there saying that 55% of the people are not going to go to concerts, they're not going to go where large groups of people are, and all that other stuff. I am known, okay, for stating the obvious, okay? If you never ask your family or your friends for their opinion on an idea, ask a stranger like me, okay, that's going to give you constructive criticism, okay, and challenge you back on your concept. So if you've got some of those concepts, okay, this is where you need to talk to other people outside your inner circle and ask them their opinion on those options and how they feel they can work or not. Caterers, doing larger events is going to be a bit of a challenge, but I think your biggest challenge right now is to prove to the public, okay, that your practices at work, okay, are safe. Make sure you have a good cleaning program, that your staff are wearing gloves and they've got plexiglass in between them and there, but you can still do catered events. I think people are going to like that, but how are you going to present it? Like that's where I think you need those creative juices flowing to come up so that your catering dish or your package is different, looks different, but it appeals right now to your local market, okay? Because the tourist season is in a Hurt Locker. So you need to be focusing on who your clientele is right now.
Thank you. Well, Bill, thank you very much. This has been a great conversation. You've provided us with so much insight. I learned a lot. Obviously, cash is king. We need to be very creative. I think we all need to get back in the game, is what you're telling us. Maybe not be so nice, be a bit more aggressive and stand up for ourselves, because we're fighting for our livelihoods here. But I really appreciate your time today, and I think you have made an amazing first webinar for us and have set the bar really high for the future ones. So thank you. It's great to finally meet you, and I hope our paths will cross again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And over to you, Kent, I think, to sign off.
Yeah, I'd echo that, Tracy. I think, Bill, we could probably listen to you for hours and your advice, but I'm sure you're busy these days, so we don't want to hold too much longer. The things for any of the participants is recordings will be on the Forage PEI website, as well as the foodislandpei.ca website. And if you have questions and you're in, especially for those in Prince Edward Island, feel free. Our contact information is at foodislandpei.ca. Feel free to reach out. We'll do our best to help you with whatever we can. And as Tracy said, this is the first in the series. So this morning, I think we booked everybody for our next webinar, which is next Wednesday at 3 p.m. And then it's going to be called Setting Up an Online Store and Distribution in the Food Industry. So we have a panel lined up of speakers, and we'll be sending out registration information to all the participants that have signed up today, as well as people that have participated in Forage in the past and on social media. So that's everything I have. Thank you very much today.
Thank you very much. And Bill, I think you're going to be on CBC tonight if anyone wants to tune in and hear more.
Yeah, CBC National. I think we filmed that show yesterday, and I think it's going to air tonight at 10 o'clock on the East Coast. I think it is. Yeah, that's what they told me anyway. So good.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, no worries.
Bye.